Hey guys, so this is not my normal content and I'm going to try to get through this without crying. Tonight something really scary happened to me and I'm so grateful for TikTok, because if it wasn't for TikTok and the videos that other people share about this, that I would not have known what was happening, because I am a very oblivious person. I really don't care what's going on around me. I kind of stay in my happy bubble like I teach you guys. But always be aware. So tonight I went to the gym. It's a Friday night. I went to the gym because I didn't have my kids. Went to the gym and I was going to Walmart to pick up some stuff for this new diet that I'm trying. So I'm roaming around the Walmart and, I live in a pretty good area, feeling like this would not happen here, okay? But I was always aware because of what I've seen on TikTok. So I'm in Walmart and there's this guy there who had a white hoodie on, and he had the hood up like this, covering his head the whole time.
You gonna need a drink to watch this shit right here. It's been 2 days later and I need a drink just talking about it. Y'all know I'm a big fan of documentaries, especially true crime documentaries, but I don't think I've ever watched something so disturbing in my life. Great Photo Lovely Life is about a very damaged family. I'm talking about from the top to the bottom. And you meet this young woman here who dives deep into these allegations, and they're not fucking allegations, when it comes to her grandfather and his chiropractic business and all this shit that he had going on with being accused and found guilty of molesting some of his patients and his family members. It was a very hard watch just to hear the grandfather admit to some of the shit that he did. Was sickening to my fucking stomach. For me, what was more heartbreaking was her mom, the daughter of the grandfather, who, because of her own damage from her mother, it just trickled down into their lives. And there just was...
I had two sisters that were getting a matching tattoo. One's getting this end of the phrase, the other one's getting the remainder. So the older sister went first, and I placed the stencil and asked her to get up and check it out in the mirror. And as soon as she looked, she had like a look in her face. So I was like, "What's wrong?" And she said, "The placement's good, but the tattoo's backwards." And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, "The lettering, it's all backwards." And I was like, "Well, you're looking into it in a mirror, so the letters are going to be backwards, but it's right side. That's how a mirror works." And her sister called her stupid and laughed and went over, and she's like, "Oh my God, she's right. It is backwards." So I had to step out of the room to compose myself. I couldn't believe that this was actually happening, that two people didn't understand how a mirror worked.
Right out of my apprenticeship. I'm alone in the shop. I'm finishing a tattoo on a girl. Everything's going great. Tattoo looks great. I'm ready. I'm doing this thing. I'm ready to clean her up. She passes out. We have a tiny bit left to go. Passes out. Trying to wake her up, whatever, smelling salt. She gets up, but she's still super woozy, throws up. I'm trying to give her some soda, drinks some soda, throws up again. She's like, so I get her, she's fine. Her friend is like, "Excuse me, I need to talk to you." I'm like, okay. So her friend pulls me outside of the shop and she asks me, could this be because she got an abortion?
So they make a hole in and they tie string around, and then they put it all around the body, but they're naked. And they got this tattoo on the private with little piercings.
Okay.
Not like earrings, but little gold piercings around the private.
Yeah.
And they all dance around with skulls on in the church there.
Okay.
So they have skulls, like the teachers and the staff, they got 20 skulls each.
And how do you know they've got 20 each?
Yes, because I counted once. They were like, there's one here, and then there's one here. And there's one on the neck here, they looks like skulls everywhere. On the knees, on the elbows, it looks like armor.
Okay, so if I was to try and find these skulls, where would I find them?
Yes, in the church.
Where in the church?
So there's secret rooms, they got secret rooms.
Go on, tell me, how do I find the secret?
So when you go in the secret rooms, because they hide it in loads of places.
Would you be able to help me find them, would you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, so they just hide them anywhere. They just hide it in one place, then they move to other place, then they move to other place. It's just...
Okay, so I go into the church now.
Yes, and they hide. Usually they hide it in their houses because they have parties in their houses.
Okay.
Because Mr. Hollings, my teacher, he lives in Highgate.
Right.
Yes. You can see his house because his Porsche. He got Porsche and it's just at the front of his house.
Okay. So, how do you know he keeps them in his house?
There was this trucker in northern Texas. He said he was driving New Year's night one night on this rural back highway. And he said it was completely dark. There wasn't another car in sight. And as he was making his way down this road, he noticed something up ahead in the middle of the road. So he slowed his truck down, and as he got a little bit closer, he said he could see this very young girl wearing a white gown, very long blonde hair, and she was barefoot. So he slowly made his way around her, and he stopped his truck. And he said, he had a daughter around that age, and he felt, I can't leave this girl out in the middle of nowhere. So he honks his horn, and after a couple minutes, he hears a knock on his passenger side window. He rolls it down, and there's that girl. He said he could see her better. She had this very long, flowing blonde hair, pale white face with freckles. And he said, look, I insist that you get in the truck, and I give you a ride to the nearest town because I don't feel comfortable leaving you here alone out in the middle of nowhere. So she gets in the truck with him, and he starts driving away. Well, he starts asking her questions, why are you out in the middle of nowhere? Why are you not wearing any shoes? Like, are you in some kind of danger? The girl doesn't say anything. The only thing she's doing is making these weird groaning sounds, like, and he said, that was a little weird, but I really didn't think much of it at the time. He said, all of a sudden, as they're driving, she points out in front of him, and she says, 37. And he said, what's 37? What does that mean? She doesn't respond. She doesn't say anything. So he said at that point, he was kind of a little weirded out, and it's like, I'm just going to make it to the nearest town as fast as possible. So as he continues on driving, he said all of a sudden, this girl got up from her seat, and she crawls into the cab. And he was like, now she's somewhere in the cab. It's dark. I can't see her. Like, where did she go? So he starts yelling, like, you need to get back in the front of the truck or I'm going to, like, kick you out. Like, you need to get up here. She doesn't respond. And he said all of a sudden he sees her head kind of peek up between the two seats. And she just looks at him and starts smiling. And he said she started waving at him to come in the back into the cab. And he said, look, you need to get out of here right now. Like, come up to the front seat. He said all of a sudden she went back in the cab. And a couple minutes later, she started screaming. So he said, you know what? I've had enough of this. He slams on his brakes. He pulls the truck to the side of the road. And he gets out. Well, he's standing in front of his truck. He gets on the phone. He calls the police. They send a sheriff out. The sheriff, goes inside the truck. He checks the cab. He doesn't find anyone. And the trucker is like, what are you talking about? Like, there's a girl, she was in the cab. She's like crazy. Like, you need to get her out there. And the sheriff says to the trucker, like, I want you to go to the nearest rest stop, get some sleep, like take a nap because you've been driving too long. So he listens to the sheriff. He goes to the nearest town. He finds a truck stop and he takes a nap. Well, after he wakes up, he gets out of the truck to go into the truck stop when all of a sudden he notices this plaque next to a field. So he walks over to this plaque and he starts reading it. And it says that at one time there was a small little village there and there were 37 residents. A cholera epidemic came through and all of them succumbed to this, epidemic or whatever. And he said the weirdest part, though, was when he looked down, there was a picture of some of the people in the town. There was that girl in the white dress.
So check this crazy ass loophole I just went through. I nutted in the condom. Put water in the condom. Okay? Then, you want to take it a step further, put the condom over a light. At that point, you're going to see a homemade lava lamp. Not capping though.
Y'all want to hear about that time I encountered spirits in Egypt? We get there. And it's beautiful. I mean, of course, it's incredible to see You have the step pyramid, there's a temple, and there's this big open courtyard where he used to hold Olympic style games. The King Dozier built this thing. Imhotep was the architect for it. And he basically built this to kind of flex his muscle to show that he's him. And at the time, he was, you know? So we're walking through and we're getting ready to leave. And one of the, guards there is just like, hey, like, you want to go like to one of these other areas, right? But like, oh, this is where we found the sarcophagus of King Dozier. And I'm like, oh, well, this is cool. When we get to this area, there's no one else around. The guard is only at the very top. There's nobody else, no other tourists down there, anything like that. So in order to get down to where this sarcophagus is, you have to go way down off in the ground. So much so that there's scaffolding along the side so that you can walk. So I take my little happy self and I'm like, okay, I want to get a good clear shot of this because I had my little DJI Osmo. I was like, yeah, I want to get a clear shot of this. Like, so I'm in the front. And I'm walking my little happy self. And then I get to this point where I'm walking towards this, what would have been like a door opening, right? I get to the door opening. And then all of a sudden, I feel this presence. And that's the only way for me really to describe it. I feel this presence. And it gets in front of me. And then so much so that I stop and I go, woo! Because it was almost like it filled the entire doorway. Y'all, when I say I could not move forward, I just kind of paused. And it was one of those like, it felt like, the best way for me to describe it, a bouncer at a club? You know how a bouncer at a club has like this like really intense presence? Imagine that, but like on 10. And imagine it with like a sword. That's the kind of like energy. And so I kind of paused for a second. The people that are behind me, they say, oh, is there someone there? And I go, no, there's no one here. And then by the time they get close, they're like, oh yeah, we saw somebody.
I just seen somebody in front of you. Brittany.
Huh?
Yeah, that's why I asked. I saw somebody in front of her. Right there by that door? Yep. Yeah. So we saw.
I mean,
Nah, we saw.
I beg your pardon. What you mean you saw somebody? So now I'm spooked. Now I'm like, what was that? So I walk forward, and the only thing before I start to walk forward, what I said like to myself was, I come peacefully. I come peacefully. When I said that, it moved. Now I know how that sounds. So the group that I'm with, by the time they actually get a little closer to me, they were like, oh, like, what did you say to it? And I was like, cause they were like, it moved. And I, y'all, I'm not the one or the two for no foolishness. Cause now at this point, now I'm spooked and we've just barely made it halfway down. So you still got to go further. So we keep walking and there's this big, like alcove area where it has these large steps where you can sit on and they want to take pictures. I'm spooked. Cause at this point, what was that? You know what I mean? And not only what was that, what's down here? Cause I'm like, wait a minute. And this, y'all, I have been places, I've never experienced anything like that. I felt it. I didn't see anything. They apparently saw something. I don't know if this ain't all the way open yet or what, but I was like, when we getting up out of here, buddy? Like, what's happening? So we take the pictures, beautiful shots. We keep walking. And the further that you walk down, the closer you're getting to where the sarcophagus would have been, the energy in the air, that's the only way for me to describe it. The air felt like it was doing this, like, y'all. By the time we get further down, at this point, you feel like you're being watched. That's the only way for me really to describe it. So by the time we get all the way to the bottom, I look around at the people that I'm with and I'm like, y'all, can we take a second to like pray or sender or something like that? Because we weren't invited here. Can we pause for a second to like...
You okay?
No, I'm fine. It's just that I know there's energy here, but we weren't invited in the space, So can we just... We come peacefully. Not invasively.
Yes.
Isn't it? We come in love.
Yeah.
They feel our heart.
What it felt like back up at the top was, what I knew was, one, civilians probably were not allowed down there back then. Two, women were probably not allowed down there back then, right? And it wasn't like one of those things where it didn't feel like it was something that was going to harm me per se, but it was kind of one of those things like, you got to straighten up, you know what I mean? Like, recognize where you're going, like, you know what I mean, and come correct with it. Because I was like prancing myself, like, you know what I mean? Because it's like, you're in Egypt and you're seeing all these cool things, and you're like, oh, we're going into look like, you know, and it was like, nah, like, straighten up, tighten up, you know what I mean? So by the time we start to walk back up, right? When I walked past that same area, that same entryway, I was like, ooh, come peacefully, right? And by the time I start walking up the scaffolding, because at this point, I'm booking it. I'm getting up as far as I possibly can. All of a sudden, like a windstorm, like a sandstorm happens, and sand and wind just start hailing down on top of our heads. By the time I get out of there, I'm just like, what was that? Yeah, y'all. By the time I got up out of there, I was like, okay. And so then you walk up and then you kind of walk to the left, and then that's kind of where the village would have been, right? And as I'm walking, I'm having like a mind body, like what just happened type of thing. But like the feeling of the space, you felt the how alive it was. And like I said, y'all, I've been many places. I have never quite felt anything like that. And it felt like an alive place. And so what I started doing from that point on, and I'm very glad because this was very early in the trip, whenever I would go into a new space, there are a few things that I would do. I would introduce myself. I would say what my name was. I would say where I'm from. And then I would say that I come peacefully, right? So I would say, hello, my name is Brittany. I come from the west across the sea. My family's from Louisiana. I come to you peacefully, and I thank you for allowing me to visit your space. That's what I would say. And from that point on, any space that I was going into, it felt more inviting, it felt more peaceful, and it wasn't like it was antagonistic before, but like, you know, Egypt, there was a place of like trade and commerce. There were visitors coming in all the time. So foreigners were something that were a part of the everyday life. But the thing that was very evident about the culture was that it was very structured. There was hierarchy. There was protocol for how you engage with people. And when most tourists come to places, they come to take. They want to take their photos. They want to have their experience. But when it comes to actually acknowledging the life and the intentionality that people had to build these spaces back then, I believe coming with this posture, a heart posture of peace and of gratefulness and gratitude, and realizing you are a sojourner in their space, you know what I mean? It changed how I was received in the space. So yeah, y'all. Let me know, have y'all ever encountered anything like that? Like, have you ever traveled somewhere and felt like the energy of the place, of the people who built it? And how did you like navigate that? So when I started introducing myself, kind of going into spaces, and I would just speak to the space, I found that I could get into places and get into spots that like other people couldn't get into. I just found that to be the case. Like, other people behind me would get stopped, and I would just breeze right on in. And I believe like being respectful of the space and the energy. But like Egypt, if you ever thought about going to Egypt, I highly recommend it. It's not necessarily a first time place to go. The richness of the culture, the intentionality, the beauty of the space, but even for it to be so ancient, it is very much alive. I recommend it. If you ever thought about going, go.
Oh yeah, one more thing. If y'all see me on Love Island, mind your fucking business, bitch. I'm trying to find love, bitch. Y'all had y'all motherfucking chance.
What if you were having the most terrifying sleep paralysis incidents of your life just to find out that it was not sleep paralysis, it was real? That is what happened to this girl. I hope you're not watching this alone. I hope you're not sleeping alone tonight. So Jasmine's parents were divorced, and when she was around 15 years old, she moved home to her father's house. She had a little brother that was 13 years younger than her, so he was very small when they moved in. So in the beginning of living in this house, she didn't really experience much. The one thing that she did experience, though, was she started getting sleep paralysis, and she had never had sleep paralysis before. So things started off small. So she would go to sleep, and then she would wake up in the middle of the night. She couldn't move. She would look over, and her door would be open, which was weird because she always kept her door closed. She kind of decides to brush this off, though, but time goes on, and her sleep paralysis just gets worse. She started to see things, and this scared her. So she started reading up on this, and she found out that it's sleep paralysis and that it's normal to see things in sleep paralysis, that you can hallucinate. But there was one problem. She could not get over what she was seeing, and she could remember every single detail the next day, and it terrified her. She would wake up, she would not be able to move, and the door would just slowly creak open. She's lying on her back and she can't move. So she wants to look at the door, but she can't look at the door because she can't move. So she's trying to look at the door with the corner of her eye. When suddenly a small dark-haired girl starts crawling on all fours towards her bed, crouches down in this weird position, and then just tilts her head this way and smiles. She said that she has never felt so unsafe and so unsettled in her life, and what was worse is what the girl looked like. Her eyes gone, just sockets of darkness, and she could feel her malicious intent. Now, a full year goes by with this happening almost nightly, and soon she starts to wake up with her door open in the morning. Now, you think that's bad. It just gets creepier. Now, during this time, her little brother gets bigger and bigger, and he starts to walk and talk. Now, she would spend a lot of time babysitting him, especially at night, because her father worked the night shift. And one night, she's babysitting him, and she's just sitting in her room, and he's sitting in the living room, and she hears him giggling and talking to somebody. And something really weird is happening to me right now. My phone is getting so hot, I can't hold it anymore. Look at my fingers. Look at my fingers. That's from holding my phone because it doesn't have a case on it right now. I just had to put my case on. That's insane. We'll talk about that later. So she decides to go into the living room to see who he's talking to and why he's giggling like that. And so she walks into the living room and he looks at her and he has this happy face on when suddenly it just falls and he looks terrified. Now this really weirded her out because he had never been scared of her before. Even when he was in trouble, he was never scared of her. So she goes and sits down next to him and she asks him, "Who are you talking to? What are you doing?" He just keeps looking behind her. Like 3 or 4 times. He looks terrified and he is not answering her. And finally, after like the 3rd or 4th time, he says, "She doesn't like you." Then he looks behind her one more time before placing his little finger on his mouth and just goes, So later on that night, she goes to bed and she wakes up in the middle of the night out of nowhere to see her door open and a red sensor light illuminating just this little child. So this really terrified her until she realized that it was just her little brother. So she gets up and she goes and asks him what he's doing and why he is up. So he doesn't answer her at first, and then he just goes like this and points behind her. She said in this moment she has never been so scared in her entire life, so she decides to turn around. And when she swings around, she sees nothing. So she's like, why are you pointing? Nothing's there. And he starts to get frustrated with her and angry at her because she doesn't believe him. So she decides to go take him back to bed and she's trying to press him for more information. That's when she tells him that a dark-haired girl won't let him sleep and keeps asking him to play. She said that once he mentioned the dark-haired part, that a shiver ran down her spine, and she said, that was probably the truest fear I've ever felt. But she doesn't want to scare him, obviously, so she just tells him to go to sleep and tells him to tell her that he isn't old enough to play at night. This makes him smile because they had a little inside joke about him having to go to sleep early and her being allowed to go to parties late at night. But after this incident, things started to happen like this often. He would just be standing in the hallway at night talking to somebody. So she tells her dad about this and her dad just kind of brushes it off. He's like, listen, he's a kid. He has a big imagination, except for it gets really bad here. One night, she has sleep paralysis, the same as she always does. She wakes up the next morning and she has these deep red scratch marks going down her leg. You could see where the marks had started and ended. And this is when she finally had enough and just asked her dad for help. Now, he didn't really believe in any of this stuff, but he did have a friend that was a medium. So the medium comes by and the medium tells her to go in her room and have a conversation with her little brother, and the medium is going to record it. She said that she does this, and later on when they went back and listened to the recording, they were actually able to catch a girl's voice saying, "Hello." She said it definitely wasn't her voice. It was way too high pitched and way too perfect. She said that it was so perfect that it was almost clearer than their voices. So at this point, she just wants to get the hell out of there. So she moves out of there as fast as she could. Unfortunately, this does not help and things get worse. So she moves into a house in the forest. There's at least 2 to 3 kilometers between her and the nearest neighbor. You had to go by the house no matter what if you wanted to go into the forest. She said that she started to hear footsteps walking in the hallways. She would hear hushed voices from rooms that she wasn't in. Even her dog didn't like the forest, which she didn't know or understand until one night. So the dog runs away and she is thinking in her head, with all the wildlife, he's gonna run into the forest. So she goes out to look for him. Now this is not in America. So in her country, there are no real predators. She said that the biggest threat is foxes. So she walked and called for him for about 30 minutes. And suddenly she sees eyes reflecting back at her from further into the bushes. Now she's relieved at this point because she's thinking that it's her dog. But as she gets closer, this thing stands up on 2 legs. She said that this thing was taller than her, even from meters away, and suddenly she starts to hear whistling behind her. She said it was like this slow and deliberate whistling, which froze her in her spot. She knew for a fact that she was the only one in the forest. Nobody had come by the house for hours, and people weren't allowed in the forest after sunset anyways. She said at this point, she just effing ran, her exact words, and she ran until she reached her house. So she gets to her house and she notices something. There are no lights left on in her house, and she left them on purpose because it makes it easier for her to see her way home from the forest. Her dog didn't even end up going into the forest. He instead went into town, which was kilometers away. Now, she thought that this was really weird that he went into town because she had never walked that way with him, and she would assume that he would go into the forest because there's animals in the forest. So she decides to move again because she's like, I'm not staying in some haunted forest, not realizing that moving again was not going to help her. So she moves into her current apartment and things just keep happening. Now, she has security cameras since her dog has separation anxiety and doesn't like being alone. So it started with her dog actually this time. She's at work one day and she's watching the live footage of her house on her phone when he suddenly got up and started like dancing and jumping towards the door as if he was greeting somebody at the door. Then he starts slowly walking towards the bed and he just starts growling viciously. She said she has never heard him growl like that before. She says there's been other times when she's seen a human-sized shadow following him around the apartment. She won't be able to find her stuff and that it will turn up in the weirdest places. And she found a sentimental small vase stuffed into one of her shoes. She says she has no idea how this is possible because those two things have never been in reach of each other. She said the most uncomfortable thing that she's ever experienced in this new place though is when she was in the shower. She said she was just showering like normal when suddenly she starts to hear these heavy footsteps. They're so heavy, they're like vibrating the floor, and they feel like they are right outside the shower curtain. So she rips the shower curtain open, getting ready to see somebody when nobody is there. So she brushes it off and she closes the shower curtain. 30 seconds later, same thing. She said it was so heavy that she really could not brush it off this time, and it really felt like a big, heavy man was walking, but it just took 2 steps. So that was the end of the email. What do you guys think about that story? First of all, scariest part to me was the girl crouching. You guys already know. You already know. What was the scariest part to you? This sounds like a serious haunting. Like, that's so terrifying. I'm so sorry that you're going through this. Also, my fingers, let's see if they're still red at all. Yeah, a little bit. I have my phone case on now. That is so weird. That has never happened to me. I can feel how hot my phone is through the phone case. I don't use a phone case when I tell scary stories because I don't use a phone case all day, because when I record for work all day, I have to set it on like the phone holder and it doesn't fit because my phone case is too bulky because it has a wall behind it. So that was freaky. I don't know if it's just my phone overheating or something for some reason randomly tonight, but that was weird. So sorry I don't have time for the shout outs, you guys. I only have a couple more seconds, but I do want to say I know I'm so behind on comments. For those of you who are new, I'm not one of those creators who doesn't respond to comments. I respond to almost all of my comments. You can ask my followers. I will get to them tomorrow and the next day. I'm so sorry. I love you guys so much. Have a spooky night.